Taxand Tax Updates. Disclaimer: the following information is intended only to be a guide. It must not be relied on in or applied to specific situations without previously seeking proper professional advice. Depreciation of tangible assets and/or amortization of intangible assets. The government has issued Minister of Finance Regulation No. 72 Year 2023 or MOF Regulation 72, which amends Minister of Finance Regulation No. 96 PMK.03 of 2009 or MOF Regulation 96. MOF Regulation 72 has been put into force since July 17, 2023, through which the depreciation of tangible assets and/or amortization of intangible assets are regulated with the following conditions. 1. Depreciation of tangible assets. Non-building tangible assets in the form of machines that produce or manufacture processed tobacco products such as tobacco chopping machines, cigarette rolling machines, and the like, used in business activities in the tobacco processing industry which were not previously listed in the appendix of MOF Regulation 96 are categorized into Category 2 with a useful life of 8 years. For non-building tangible assets that are not listed in the appendix of MOF Regulation 72, the useful life of Category 3 is still used for the purpose of fiscal depreciation. However, if the taxpayer does not use the useful life of Category 3, the taxpayer must submit an application to the Director General of Taxes, or the DGT, to receive a determination of the useful life of Categories 1, 2, or 4. Depreciation of tangible assets begins from the month the expense is incurred to acquire the tangible assets, except for A. Tangible assets that are still in the process of being constructed. Depreciation will start from the month the construction of the asset is completed. For B. Tangible assets that have never been used or have not yet been used for production, depreciation will start from the month the asset is used to obtain, collect, and maintain income, or in the month the asset begins to produce, or when production starts without the consideration of when income is received or earned. Or, for C, tangible assets owned and used in certain business fields. In the case of depreciation timing mentioned in point B above, the taxpayer must submit an application to the DGT to obtain a determination on when the depreciation will begin. Furthermore, there is also a provision stipulated in MOF Regulation 72 for depreciation of permanent buildings, which have a useful life of more than 20 years, for which taxpayers may be able to choose depreciation based on A. a useful life of 20 years, or B. according to the actual useful life based on the taxpayer's bookkeeping, as long as it is done in accordance with the principles. However, if the taxpayer chooses depreciation according to the actual useful life of the permanent building that has been owned and used before the 2022 fiscal year and has been depreciated according to the useful life of 20 years, then the taxpayer must submit a notification to the DGT by no later than April 30, 2024. After the notification is submitted, the calculation of depreciation of permanent buildings starting in the 2022 fiscal year is carried out over the actual remaining useful life based on the remaining fiscal book value at the end of the 2021 fiscal year. 2. Repair costs of tangible assets and insurance compensation. A. Depreciation of repair costs of tangible assets. Repair costs for tangible assets owned and used to obtain, collect, and maintain income that has a useful life of more than 1 year are expensed through depreciation by adding the repair costs to the remaining fiscal book value of tangible assets. B. Insurance compensation. In the event that there is a transfer or withdrawal of assets that are covered by insurance, the remaining fiscal book value of the asset is expensed as a loss and the selling price or insurance compensation is recognized as income in the year the assets are withdrawn. However, if the amount of insurance compensation to be received can only be identified with certainty in the future, then the remaining fiscal book value of the assets is expensed in the fiscal year the insurance compensation is received by submitting an application to the DGT. 3. Amortization of intangible assets. Amortization of intangible assets and other expenses, including the cost of extending building use rights, cultivation rights, usage rights, and goodwill, which have a useful life of more than 1 year and are used to obtain, collect, and maintain income, will be calculated over the useful life and based on the amortization rate as follows. Intangible assets under Category 1 with a useful life of 4 years will be based on an amortization rate of 25% using the straight-line method and 50% using the double declining balance method. Intangible assets Category 2 with a useful life of 8 years will be based on the amortization rate of 12.5% using the straight-line method and 25% using the double declining balance method. Intangible assets under Category 3 with a useful life of 16 years will be based on an amortization rate of 6.25% using the straight-line method and 12.5% using the double declining balance method. Intangible assets under Category 4 with a useful life of 20 years will be based on an amortization rate of 5% using the straight-line method and 10% using the double declining balance method, where the amortization starts from the month the expenditure is made. If the intangible asset has a useful life of more than 20 years, the taxpayer may be able to choose amortization based on A, a useful life based on Category 4, or B, according to the actual useful life based on the taxpayer's bookkeeping, as long as it is done in accordance with the principles. However, if the taxpayer chooses amortization according to the actual useful life of intangible assets that have been owned and used before the 2022 fiscal year and have been amortized based on the useful life of assets in Category 4, then the provisions and procedures related to this matter are the same as the provisions for permanent buildings as described in point 1 above. 4. Depreciation in certain business fields. Depreciation of tangible assets in certain business fields, namely forestry, perennials plantation, and livestock, is regulated as follows. A. Forestry plants are categorized into Category 4. B. Perennials are categorized into Category 4. And C. Livestock are categorized into Category 2 if they can reproduce after being raised for more than 1 year, or are depreciated in up to 4 years if they can reproduce after being raised for less than or up to 1 year. In the event that the taxpayer does not use the useful life according to the depreciation categories mentioned above, the taxpayer must submit an application to the DGT to obtain a determination of the useful life category. Provisions for the application procedures for an approval and/or notification to the DGT are further regulated in MOF Regulation 72. Thank you for listening to PB Taxand Tax Updates.